Cursed to crawl on their bellies, snakes have taken to the limbless lifestyle with seeming languid movement. But these apparently listless articulations of their sinuous bodies are done with great intention. Without claws, legs, or arms, they can climb trees, slide across the ground, and some can even glide in the air. But one viper is posed with a particular challenge in the form of soft, shifting sand. But laudable locomotion is just one way an interesting serpent can make its way through life, death, and taxonomy. Welcome back to Life, Death, and Taxonomy. It's your 30 minutes of interesting animal info. I'm Joe.
And I'm Carlos.
And today we're talking about an animal that has adapted to a legless lifestyle in an arid region. But more on that later. Also, thank you to Cassie for the creation of our theme song. To hear more of Cassie's music, search Cassie Michelle on YouTube.
Did I hear you say legless lifestyle? Because archery is really hard.
I did not say Legolas, but that's something that I was thinking about a lot when I was typing that word several times.
But yeah, we're not talking about Legolas. We're not talking about shallow, immortal, overpowered elves in fantasy movies. We are talking about the horned viper. And not just any horned viper, because it turns out there's more than one.
That's true. Even though the horned viper has horns, and other ones have spiky ridges maybe.
Yeah, this one is about as horned viper as a horned viper can get.
Yeah.
It's also known as the Saharan horned viper, if you want to distinguish it, or the desert horned viper. Brian, when he sent us the art, called it the Vied viper.
Because it's vying for
your attention, because it's so interesting. And this is interesting animal info. But we're going to look at here the spiny serpent, Cleopatra's curse, and Cerastes, which we'll find. Which I'll explain that right now with the taxonomy. How about that?
Okay.
It's in a kingdom you know, you love, and are in. That kingdom is Animalia. Could it be anything else? I guess it could, but it's not. Not this time. The phylum is Chordata. It's got a long spine. It's mostly spine, actually. The class is Oh, wait. Did we decide? Wait, is it Reptilla or Reptilia? Because I did this by memory.
It's Reptilla.
Reptilla. There's no such thing as Reptilia. Not even... It is by the strokes, yes. And it is, yes, Reptilia. It's Reptilia. There is no such thing as Reptilla.
Dang it. We'll never know that. That'll never seep in.
We will not. We do know. We just will never remember. The order is Squamata. That's basically lizards and snakes. And the suborder is Serpentes, which I think you can guess is not lizards. Weeds out the lizard part. It's snakes. I'm surprised Serpentes is not the name of some Hogwarts professor. The family is Viperidae, aka vipers. The genus is Cerastes, and the species is Cerastes. So, Cerastes. Whatever
my favorite
will bite,
spicy sauce.
Whatever will bite will bite. It's very close to Sriracha, except it's a neurotoxin. Which go great with fish. But since we're in the business of naming things, it's time for my favorite part of the show, Critter Groups. The part of the show where I ask you, Joe, a question that question is the same every time. What is the name of a group of this animal? Or what is the term of venery? Or what is just the collective noun? All the same. So I think we've done snakes before, but I couldn't remember what it was off the top of my head, so I'm assuming that you don't remember what it is off the top of your head. So let's go with it. If you saw a group of snakes, would you say it's A, a slither of snakes, B, a pit of snakes, C, a knot of snakes, or D, a hiss of snakes?
A pit of snakes is an actual, like, a vessel of snakes. As in Indiana Jones. Also pit vipers. But a knot is something else. A knot of frogs.
It's an army of frogs.
But it's also a knot, right?
I'm not gonna give you any more hints.
I was gonna be like, no, I'm gonna look at it. Oh, wait, no, that's cheating.
It is cheating.
Okay, I'm not doing that. Not a knot. Knot is something else. I'm going with a pit.
Final answer?
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. You're correct. This is a pit of snakes.
Why did it have to be snakes?
Yeah, why did it have to be snakes? He handles it quite well, though, considering his phobia.
Well, he's just the kind of guy that rises to a challenge.
Yeah, not even his greatest fear can bring Indiana Jones down.
Yeah, it really doesn't seem like he has a phobia. He's not crippled by fear. He just has a healthy fear. Like, it's a dangerous animal.
Yeah, but he doesn't have a healthy fear of other animals. He does encounter quite a few, especially in, I think, the third one, and he doesn't really seem to be bothered by any of them but snakes.
He just punches them with that, like, book falling on the ground sound effect.
Yeah. You know how punches sound? Not like that damp slap.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what like MMA cage fighting would be if that was the sound that Indiana Jones punching
Just a thunderous punch.
And just the words "pow" show up on screen every time. It would just be it would be
a spectacle.
It would be bad for people with epilepsy because there'd just be so much pow on the screen. All right, so horned viper, where does it live? It lives in the deserts of northern Africa and the Middle East, all the way from Morocco and Somalia to Yemen and Qatar.
Yeah.
I looked it up. You can say it both ways.
I've heard it both ways.
It seems like most people have more of a problem with Qatar, so we'll go with Qatar, which makes more sense to me anyway. So yes, this is a desert snake. It's called the desert horned viper, or the Saharan horned viper. So it likes the sandy places. So let's talk about what it looks like. It has a short, thick body, at least for a snake. Where a lot of snakes are smooth and shiny, think like a python or something. The horned viper, and most vipers, have raised kind of matte finish scales. They kind of look spiny, like they would hurt if you grab them. And they will hurt if you grab them, but not necessarily because of the scales. The head is wide and flat, like a cookie that's not quite finished baking. And on top of the head, there are two scales that stick straight up over the eyes, like horns. It's the horned viper. And it's very prominent. It looks very angry and mischievous and diabolical. The scales on all over its body are mottled shades of tan, which help it mimic the color of the sand, and there are darker blotches of tan running down the length of its body. But I said it has a short, thick body, but that could mean a lot of things, especially when you're talking about a snake, because snakes can be huge or tiny.
Okay.
So tell us how huge or tiny.
Oh, okay. Welcome to the Beloved Measure Up segment, the official listener's favorite part of the show, the part of the show when we present the animal size and dimensions in relatable terms through a quiz that's fun for the whole family. It's also part of the show that's introduced by you. When you send an audio of yourself saying, singing, or chittering the words measure up into ldtaxonomy@gmail.com. We don't have a new measure up intro this week.
No.
But that means we get to hear from an animal and Carlos has to guess what it is.
That's fine.
Okay. Without further ado, the listener's favorite part of the show.
Oh my.
So, is that A, a saltwater crocodile, B, a hamadryas baboon, C, an American bison, or D, my rumbly tummy?
Your rumbly tummy.
That's right. It's dinner time.
And you just want a small smackerel of
Honey.
honey.
Christopher.
Should do a whole episode like that, or a whole intro.
Certain times of
Like Winnie
day,
the Pooh.
my vocal cords just won't do that.
Yeah, it is. It is a difficult balance to strike. I bet you it's easier in the morning.
It's like there needs to be a dry breeze just kind of passing over my vocal cords.
Oh, bother. No, see, that's not even close.
Christopher. No, I can't like it. See that?
It's getting worse.
Yeah. It was there. It's just like there's cracks and crackling.
Yeah, and Pooh is definitely not about crackling.
No, he's smooth like honey.
I'm going to say saltwater crocodile. It's either that or the bison.
Final answer, saltwater crocodile?
Yes.
You should have gone with your second instinct. It is the American bison. It is the low rumble is also indicative of a crocodile sound.
Yeah, you thought you were going to get me with that baboon.
Yeah.
Just because,
it's a dark horse. You always throw in a dark horse. Sometimes it gets you, sometimes it doesn't.
It's coming at me like a dark horse.
That's right. Let's talk length. When you're talking about a snake, you got to talk length. They're about 30 to 60 centimeters or 12 to 24 inches. How many horned vipers go into the longest ever noodle?
24 inches is not. That is a short snake.
2 foot snake.
2 foot snake.
Yeah, so we're going with the upper end of average, so that we're talking 24 or 60 centimeters. So here's a hint. The record was achieved by the Jiangnan Food Company in China in October of 2017. And there's a video on the Guinness record page for once.
I wonder what the difference between a noodle and a piece of pasta is.
What do you mean? Aren't they all technically noodles?
I don't know.
Yeah, like a ravioli
macaroni
isn't a noodle.
But macaroni is definitely both noodle and pasta. Is it it must be the hollow core.
I think everything that's a noodle is except for like a pool noodle is pasta, right? And alternative noodles like spaghetti noodles or spaghetti squash and
punk rock alternative noodles.
Zoodles.
Those are actually pretty good. Zucchini noodles. So I gotta guess into the blue here because it could be, I guess the possibilities are endless. It could be a mile, or it could be like 100 feet. So I'll say 200 feet. Strike a good balance between those two things I said.
Okay.
And it's 2 feet, so we'll say 100. 100 snakes.
100 snakes. Final answer.
Yes.
The correct answer is 5,059 snakes.
Oh, boy.
The noodle was 3,084 meters or 10,119 feet and 1.9 inches.
That's 2 miles long. I guess it was even high. It was twice as long as my upper end. So
that's quite a long noodle. You can see the video. I've linked it on the episode page for this.
I do want to watch it.
In this huge spiral.
Yeah, it would have to be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like this noodle is going to have to stretch from here to the next town.
But the piece they use to make it is just like this chonky, like anaconda-sized hunk of dough.
That's the thing about these is that there isn't a limit to how long a noodle can be. It's not like the tallest tree or something like that, where trees only get so tall. It's all you have to do to beat that record is just spend more time making the noodle.
I don't know what the rules are. Like if there's a break in the noodle, if it doesn't count anymore, or if they have to put it like mend it somehow.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's difficult. It's just you would need the resources and time.
I assume it's very difficult, but you need like a good noodle maker. You need the resources. You need the time. And that's at that point there's no limit.
You just got to have a good noodle maker. We should all have a good noodle maker, in my opinion.
We should all. So let's move on to something that's pretty offbeat for this segment.
Great.
We're going to talk about venom lethality.
Oh.
So,
how many venom lethalities go into the weight of mercury?
Yeah. If Mercury's weight was lethality, no. So we talked about lethal doses before and how they're measured. They're measured in something called LD50 or lethal dose 50%. So that's
definitely remember that.
50. That's a measurement of 50%. How many the size of a lethal dose and how big it would have to be to kill at least 50% of a tested population. Okay. So like let's say you're testing it on 10 mice, the lethal dose would kill at least 5 mice. So It's not a fluke like this mouse was particularly sensitive to it. So it's usually like milligrams per kilogram. So like the milligram of the toxin versus the kilograms of body weight
of the victim.
Of the victim, yeah. So the lethality of the horned viper venom is 0.4 milligrams per kilogram intravenously, but we're going to talk about subcutaneously, which means beneath the skin, which is how, snakes deliver venom. They bite you.
They can probably get it into a vein.
They could, but typically it's through the flesh. So then that would be 3.0 milligrams per kilogram. So how many more times is horned viper venom toxicity than toxicity of caffeine? That sentence doesn't make it's so grammatically wrong. But I don't know how many more times deadlier. How do you say this without sounding like a dunce? So you're looking for how many more times the lethality of venom is compared to caffeine? How many more much?
Yes, this venom is very more lethal than caffeine. So we want to know how many very much more.
So here's a hint. Toxicity can vary widely from person to person, depending on many factors. The number we're working with involves oral testing on albino lab rats. And in humans, the lethal dose can be lower or higher depending on health conditions, sensitivities to like caffeine or other factors. So don't take this and be like, well, I can have that much caffeine. People have died from much, much less caffeine.
All right, I'm going to say it is 1,000 times more lethal than caffeine, which means that I think that the answer, if I understand this procedure correctly, is 0.0003 milligrams per kilogram for caffeine. Well, I guess you asked me how many times. So the answer is 1,000. I don't have to do the math. 1,000 times.
Oh, wait. No, the number would be bigger, right?
I think it takes 1,000 times. I think that caffeine is 1,000 times less lethal than horned viper venom, which means it would take 1,000 times more caffeine to kill 50% of your lab rats.
Correct. So when you're talking about LD50, the lower number is the more dangerous number. So the good thing about this question was that it would be really difficult for you to do mathematics. But the bad thing is you're incredibly, incredibly wrong. The Viper venom is about 122 times more deadly than caffeine.
Oh my goodness, caffeine is really bad for you.
The LD50 of caffeine is 367 milligrams per kilogram. So it could be as low as 500 milligrams in humans on average. And there have been like less than 100 milligram deaths of caffeine in humans.
Yeah, that's surprising. I didn't think that the gap would be that close.
There's other factors. So like if you drink, I tried to do the lethal dose of Mountain Dew Baja Blast, but there's too many variables. Like you could die of sugar intake or caffeine intake,
Or you could die of the Taco Bell that you had.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be the number one.
Everyone knows it's impossible to eat or drink Baja Blast without also having consumed
some Taco Bell.
Yeah.
Because that's the only place to get it, I think, right?
I don't know.
Pretty sure you can't get Baja Blast outside of Taco Bell.
I have no idea. But that's all I got for that. You have any quick facts, little facts, minor facts?
Speedy facts.
Okay.
Here are the fast facts. So the horned viper, the Saharan horned viper, eats lizards, small mammals, and birds. Basically, whatever it can get. I almost said hands, but that would just be so wrong. It's this. He was cursed to walk on his belly.
That's in my intro.
Oh, is it? Nice. I mean, I guess not nice because it's the fall, but basically whatever it can sink its teeth into in the desert because food is scarce. He's an ambush predator and blends in with the sand at night to snap up unsuspecting prey. But during the day, since it's 1 billion degrees outside, quote me on that, he hangs out in burrows or under rocks. Because, he's ectothermic, meaning that his body temperature is regulated by the atmosphere outside. So if it's really hot outside, his body temperature is going to be really hot. And vice versa when it's really cold. So he has to stay in places that are nominal. But food isn't the only thing you need. Yeah, nominal. That's like
in name only.
Very small, far below the real value. I guess I always thought of it as like levels. Like I guess in movies, it's like the seismograph says that the levels are nominal or something like that.
Oh, so it's like a second definition, or there's two definitions?
Yeah, but it looks like it mostly refers to money. So maybe I'm wrong here.
Money?
Yeah. Okay. Whatever. But
doesn't it also mean in name only?
Yeah, it does. That's the first definition because nom. We want to replace that word with a nice temperate. There we go.
Yeah, it makes sense. If optimal is the middle, there should be an immol that means low.
Optimal is not the middle. Optimal is the best.
Or the ideal.
Nominal would be steady. I don't know. Temperate climate or temperate temperature. Anyway, food is not the only thing that is required and is also scarce in the desert. Water is the second thing required and is possibly even more scarce. And the way that the horned viper gets water in the desert is actually pretty interesting. It gets water through the dew that condenses on its scales. So since its scales kind of stick out, not just the ones over its eyes, but all over its body, these surfaces are good places for water to condensate in the morning, which is dew when you go outside in the morning and there's water everywhere, even though it didn't rain. So the snake can hydrate using this dew. So that's one very, very helpful benefit of having such odd scales for a snake. They can also use these scales to produce a raspy warning sound by rubbing them together, which kind of does the same thing as a rattlesnake. In the wild, they can live for about 10 to 15 years, and they don't have much to worry about in terms of predators, but birds and an animal called the sand cat, which is kind of like a desert optimized cat, regular looking house cat. Those are its main predators. As far as the venom goes, when we touched on it in Measure Up, getting bit is not fun. I mean, even if it didn't have venom, it wouldn't be fun. It injects its victims with 13 different toxins. Kind of like, isn't that how many flavors are in Dr. Pepper? Or is that 31?
I don't know.
I don't know. It probably doesn't taste as good as Dr. Pepper, and I don't even like Dr. Pepper. But these toxins cause swelling, pain, excessive bleeding, nausea, sweating, fatigue, kidney failure, and heart irregularities. Some describe the feeling as having their heart squeezed by a hand, which sounds horrifying, and I can't even imagine it. That's not good.
That's how they describe having a heart attack sometimes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's got to feel so weird and painful and bad. But it's not super lethal to humans getting bit at least, once. Obviously, like if you're allergic to it or you're not treated, it can be, but it's not on the level of, say, like a diamondback rattlesnake or a cobra. And lastly, in Shakespeare's play Antony and Cleopatra, the titular heroine uses a horned viper to kill herself at the end. Basic, this Romeo and Juliet-esque ending of the play.
Maybe she was
Spoiler
little.
alert for a 500-year-old play. Sorry,
She
what?
must have been small. She must have been a small lady.
Or just Shakespeare didn't do. He was like, "What kind of snakes live over there?" And they're like, "The horned viper." He's like, she gets bit by a horned viper.
I read that like in some cases, like the amount of venom that's delivered can vary. So maybe this particular viper like just had a lot stored up. And
Yeah,
just let it all loose.
It's very plot considerate. Because that would have been really bad if she just kind of swelled up a little bit and had some heart irregularities.
Had a terrible time, yeah.
Then was totally fine after that.
Or maybe she was like, had a congenital heart defect.
That's true. That would definitely kind of ensure the toxin's lethality. But that's all I got. That's my pop culture reference for the horned viper.
Okay. Are you ready to hear some major facts?
Yeah, I
am. By major facts, I mean, well, there's a couple. So, I'm calling this one slippery sidewinders. So without legs, snakes have to rely on complex movement to handle different environments. Limbs allow many animals to standardize their locomotion. For instance, humans just put one foot in front of the other in most environments.
One foot in front of the other.
Unless you're climbing a sheer cliff or swimming or something like that. But snakes need to adapt to several different styles to deal with several different terrains. So there are 4 types of locomotion that are associated with snakes. And unfortunately, this is very visual in nature. So there's going to be a link to a video that kind of shows you each of the 4.
Winding through each of the 4 methods.
But until then, just picture in your mind's eye. Close your eyes, unless you're driving, and picture what I'm saying. So, the first and most common is serpentine, and that's the typical snake style. This is when the snake moves back and forth in an S shape, and this method involves pushing off a solid object and then pushing off bends in the body. So if they're near a rock or a tree stump, they'll push off and just kind of go forward. But if not, then they'll make a bend to make a contact point with the ground, a stable point, and then just kind of like push off that. So that because they need to bend the body to form an anchor point, it gives this method that signature S shape. So then the second one is concertina. This involves 2 anchor points, one on the front of their body and one on the back. They reach by anchoring the back of their body and then anchor the front of their body to pull the rest up.
Like an inchworm?
Yeah. So like it's an inchworm. It's also called accordion movement.
I've never seen a snake move like this.
But it's not up. The curves don't go up like an inchworm. It's side to side.
Oh, I see.
So it's like a sideways inchworm. Or like an accordion.
Okay.
And then there's rectilinear. This is the most maybe the most complex because it looks like they're gliding along the ground. But it involves movement of the snake's belly skin. So there's special groups of muscles that bunch up the belly skin forward and then push along it.
Is it the scales like that dig in or something?
Kind of, yeah. So like it's kind of like, let's say that you could like take your arm and muscles would push the skin of your arm forward to the front of your arm, and then you could just glide your body along that skin to go forward.
Delicious. I love this visual.
And this is happening along many, many points on the snake's belly. And then simultaneously their back skin is remaining stationary. So it's almost like a centipede, it looks like, where like there's like this, it just looks like their legs are doing the wave. It's the same thing with like just skin.
It's called rectilinear?
Rectilinear.
Like butt line?
I guess. Or underline. So this movement allows snakes to move when there isn't enough room to articulate their body, like on a narrow ledge.
That makes sense.
So,
Can most snakes do this?
I don't know. I think so. Like what, or else how would they would be stuck on a ledge, or they would just fall off. And then the fourth is sidewinding. Sidewinding might be the most complex movement, and it serves 2 major functions. It involves several points of contact with the ground and lateral movement instead of forward movement. Hence sidewinding. Desert sidewinders might create a track in the sand where they move forward and then lift their body up and sideways to create a new track that's parallel to the old one, like a staircase on the ground, if that makes sense. So it might also involve a scrunched up S shape where the snake's head points to their side, and then the 3 points of contact walk them sideways.
It's kind of like moonwalking for snakes.
Kind of.
They're looking in one direction and going in the other direction.
No, they're going in the direction they're looking, but they're not looking forward with their body. They're looking sideways to their body. So you take it's like an S shape, but it's scrunched up, and their head is looking to their side. In any case, if you were to straighten out the snake, they would be going sideways from it.
I'm actually looking at a GIF of this, and he's looking, let's say he's looking north, but his whole body is moving east. Or he's looking northeast, and his whole body is moving directly east.
So the thing is, there seems to be 2 different types of sidewinding, where one is what you're talking about, and the other one is like their head is looking the same direction they're moving.
Okay, I see this other one where they kind of look like this coil that's just rolling across the desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, and their head is kind of curved in the direction that they're moving.
Yes.
That one looks crazy.
Well, it curves back and forth, but they move their head forward and then back, and then move their head forward and then back.
That seems just like so much work.
Well, here's the reasons that it's useful. So the desert horned viper is the most common sidewinder, but this method is used by several different snakes from completely different parts of the world, especially in sandy deserts. But other snakes, like members of the family Homolopsinae, I've never seen a P and an S in the middle of the word together in nomenclature.
What about synopsis?
Well, that's not nomenclature, is it?
No, it's not, I guess.
This is a snake from Asia, and it uses this method of locomotion while traveling in mud flats. So it's muddy ground. So the common denominator seems to be unstable ground. So other methods of snake movement might cause the practitioner to be stuck in place with shifting sand or slide down unstable slopes, right? So imagine you're using one of these other methods where you're trying to, slide your body along like these anchor points, but you can't because the sand is just shifting beneath you.
There are no anchor points.
Right. There's no way to slide forward because the ground itself, you're just pushing it back, right? So instead of sliding along shifting ground, their points of contact are static, and the forward momentum comes from lifting their body to a new point of contact instead of sliding to a new point of contact.
That's what you got to do when all of the ground is sinking sand.
That's right. As the hymn goes. This is also important for another reason in these arid desert climates. So because sidewinding is sort of like walking where the body is lifted up to a stable point of contact, more of their belly is lifted away from the ground than it would be with other locomotion methods. So this can allow them to make less contact with really hot sand, mitigating their likelihood of overheating or burning themselves.
That makes sense. Pretty much every other form has them like continually in most of their body in continuous contact with the sand.
Right. So it's actually more anchor points, like besides like rectilinear. It has the most anchor points, usually 3 anchor points at least, but the rest of their body is lifted. Whereas like serpentine, you have 1 major anchor point, concertina, you have 2 anchor points, but the rest of your body is just sliding along the ground.
Yeah, so it's the difference between like shuffling across hot sand or kind of like tiptoeing across hot sand.
Right. Picking up your foot, giving it, and then humans and anything else that walks on feet, your belly isn't touching the hot sand.
Right.
So that's good.
That's always good. That's one of my favorite parts about being human.
Yeah.
My belly doesn't have to touch hot sand if I don't want it to.
That's true.
Although it does sometimes.
It's true. That's also true. You roll over off the blanket, it's a bad time.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm so happy I'm not a snake, and then I roll back over on my blanket.
But that's all I got.
All right, awesome. It's the horned viper, the second viper we've done.
That's true.
So go back and listen to our pit viper episode if you want to hear about our other viper, because it's cool. It has a heat vision. Just all talking about heat and temperature when it comes to vipers. So for you out there in Podcastia, drink from your scales, stay anchored, and sidewind your way to happiness like the horned viper here in Life, Death, and Taxonomy.
Hey LDT listeners, thanks for listening to the end of the episode. For your loyalty, you get a shameless self-promotion from us. If you haven't already, leaving a review on your favorite podcast app can really help us grow. But telling your podcast-loving friends about us is even better. Also, don't forget to send in your Measure Up intros and animal suggestions to ldtaxonomy@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. As always, thanks, most of all, for listening.
Life, Death, and Taxonomy is my favorite in the world podcast.
So for you out there in Podcastia, drink from your scales, stay anchored, and sidewind your... I can't say this.